The old MacBook hummed to life in Ethan's calloused hands, its screen flickering with the ghost of forgotten passwords. He'd found it buried beneath paint cans in the garage, Claire's old laptop from before they'd upgraded to matching silver ones for Christmas. Just needed to grab some old tax files. Nothing more. The iCloud sync had been automatic, seamless, and devastating. Can't wait to feel you again. Nina's asleep in the next room. Your wife thinks I'm just the pool guy. Ethan's coffee mug slipped from his grip, ceramic exploding against the concrete floor. The message thread stretched endlessly downward, weeks of exchanges between his 19-year-old daughter and someone named Jaden. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the second thread, labeled Claire, in the same contact list. Tell Nina I had to leave early. See you at the office tomorrow, beautiful. His 42-year-old hands trembled as he scrolled through months of deception. Photos of sun-soaked beaches, his wife's laugh captured in a video as strong arms wrapped around her waist. Nina in a bikini, sitting on the same man's lap just hours later, according to the timestamps. They're sharing him, Ethan whispered to the empty garage. My wife and daughter are sharing the same man. The workshop around him, 20 years of honest labor, tools arranged with military precision, suddenly felt like a shrine to his own stupidity. Every wrench, every level, every goddamn thing he'd built with his hands while his family destroyed him behind his back. Outside, gravel crunched in the driveway. Claire's Audi pulling in from her girls' trip to the coast. Nina's laughter echoing from the passenger seat, light and carefree, like she hadn't just spent 2 weeks in a beach house with her mother's boyfriend. Ethan closed the laptop with surgical precision and walked to the kitchen window. A black BMW pulled up behind Claire's car, sleek, expensive, the kind of car a successful personal trainer might drive. A man stepped out, tall and lean, probably 30 years old, with the kind of carved jawline that made women turn their heads. Jaden, the pool guy who'd been cleaning more than just chlorine out of their lives. Nina practically skipped to the BMW, her summer dress clinging to curves that made Ethan's stomach turn. Not because she wasn't beautiful, she was his daughter. Of course she was beautiful. But because now he knew what this hunter had been doing to her. Thank you for everything, Nina called out, her voice carrying the breathless quality of first infatuation. I'll text you tonight. Jaden's response was a kiss on her cheek, his hand lingering on her waist just long enough to make his intentions clear. Then he turned to Claire, who had been watching from the driver's seat with an expression Ethan had never seen before. Hungry, possessive, territorial. See you Monday, Jaden said to Claire, loud enough for neighbors to hear. Professional. Appropriate. But Ethan had read the messages. Monday wasn't about pool maintenance. The BMW pulled away, leaving mother and daughter to walk toward the house together, their heads bent in conspiratorial whispers. They looked like sisters, sharing secrets about the same boy. If the situation weren't so grotesque, it might have been touching. Ethan met them at the front door, his face a mask of practiced neutrality. 20 years of marriage had taught him how to hide his emotions when Claire was in one of her moods. Now that skill would serve a different purpose. How was the coast? He asked, embracing Claire with the same mechanical affection he'd shown for months. Perfect, she said, her lips brushing his cheek. Just what we needed. Girl time, you know? Nina bounded past them, her phone already buzzing with messages. I'm exhausted. Going to shower and take a nap? Long drive, Ethan agreed. You both look refreshed. Claire's smile was radiant, the kind that had made him fall in love with her 23 years ago. Jaden took such good care of us, made sure we were safe, you know? It's nice having a man around when you're in an unfamiliar place. I'm sure it is. That night, Ethan lay in bed listening to Claire's breathing, regular and peaceful beside him. She'd fallen asleep easily, probably dreaming of sun and sand and the taste of betrayal on her lips. Her phone buzzed occasionally on the nightstand, text messages she'd check in the morning, thinking he was still asleep. But Ethan wouldn't sleep for days. He'd spent the evening researching Jaden Collins, 29 years old, owner of Elite Fitness Solutions. His Instagram showed a carefully curated life of protein shakes and motivational quotes, shirtless photos that had earned him 12,000 followers. The comments were filled with fire emojis and marriage proposals from women who had no idea they were looking at a hunter. The most recent posts were from the beach house, group photos that looked innocent enough until you knew what to look for. Claire's hand resting on Jaden's thigh in one shot, Nina's bikini top mysteriously loose in another, the three of them sharing drinks that probably weren't their first of the day. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Carlos, his old army buddy who helped run the construction business. Beer tomorrow? Haven't seen you in weeks. Actually, yeah. I need to talk to you about something important. Everything okay, brother? Ethan looked at Claire's sleeping form, her face peaceful in the moonlight streaming through their bedroom window. She looked innocent, like the woman he'd married fresh out of college. Not like someone who'd spent 2 weeks teaching their daughter how to share a man. Everything's about to change. The next morning, Claire left for work with a kiss on Ethan's cheek and a promise to be home by 6. Early day, she'd said, but Ethan knew better. Monday meant pool maintenance, and Claire's interior design firm didn't have a pool. Nina slept until noon, then wandered into the kitchen wearing one of Jaden's t-shirts. She probably thought Ethan wouldn't notice, but he'd seen the same shirt in the beach house photos. "Dad, can I borrow some money?" she asked, pouring herself coffee with the casual entitlement of someone who'd never worked a day in her life. "For what?" "Just stuff. Girl stuff." Ethan studied his daughter's face, looking for traces of the little girl who used to build pillow forts in his workshop. She was still beautiful, still his baby girl, but there was something different in her eyes now, a knowledge that made his chest tight with protective rage. "Nina, are you seeing someone?" Her coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. "What do you mean?" "I mean dating. You've been different since the trip. Happy, but secretive?" "I'm 19, Dad. I'm allowed to have secrets." "Not from me." The words came out harsher than he'd intended, and Nina's face crumpled slightly. She'd always been sensitive to his moods, always tried to please him. It was one of the things he loved most about her, and now it made him sick to think about how easily Jaden had exploited that vulnerability. There's someone," she admitted, her voice small. "But it's complicated." "How complicated?" "He's older, and Mom knows him, so it's weird. I don't know how to tell you." Ethan's hands clenched into fists beneath the kitchen table. "How much older? 10 years, maybe a little more? And your mother approves of this?" Nina's laugh was bitter, surprising him. "Mom doesn't know about us. She thinks we're just friends, but I think she likes him too. As more than a friend." The honesty in her voice was a knife to his gut. His daughter knew on some level that she was sharing Jaden with Claire, but she was too young, too infatuated to understand the full horror of what was happening.
Nina, I need you to tell me something, and I need you to be honest. She nodded, her eyes wide with the trust she'd always shown him. Are you sleeping with him? Her face went white, then red, then white again.
"Dad, yes or no? Yes." The word was barely a whisper. "But it's not what you think. He cares about me. He says I'm mature for my age, that I understand him in ways other women don't." Ethan closed his eyes, fighting the urge to put his fist through the kitchen wall. Those were the exact words hunters used, the same manipulation tactics he'd heard about in parenting classes and news reports. But hearing them from his daughter's mouth made them real in a way that left him breathless with rage. "How long?" "Since the trip. It just happened, Dad. We were talking one night after Mom went to bed, and he told me I was beautiful. Really beautiful, not just daughter beautiful. And then we kissed, and it felt so right. Nina, listen to me very carefully. I need you to stay away from him." "What? Why?" "Because he's dangerous. Because he's using you." "You don't even know him." Nina's voice rose to a shout, her face flushed with the righteous anger of first love. "He's not using me. He cares about me. He's sleeping with your mother." The words hung in the air like a capital punishment. Nina's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the tile floor in an echo of Ethan's own discovery the day before. "That's not true," she whispered. "It is true. I have proof." "Show me." Ethan retrieved the laptop from the garage, his hands steady despite the storm raging in his chest. He opened it in front of Nina, the message threads still glowing on the screen like evidence of a crime. Nina read in silence, her face growing paler with each exchange. When she reached the photos from the beach house, the ones that showed Jaden's hands on Claire's body in ways that left no room for misinterpretation, she made a sound like a wounded animal. "He said Mom didn't understand him," she whispered. "He said older women were complicated, but I was simple. Pure. He's a hunter, Nina. He's been grooming you. But he loves me. He said he loves me. He's using you to get to your mother's money, and he's using your mother to get to you." Nina's breathing became rapid and shallow, her hands shaking as she scrolled through more messages. "There are so many. They've been talking for months, since before the trip. I know. He's been planning this, using both of us. I know." Nina looked up at him with eyes that had aged years in the span of minutes. What are we going to do? Ethan closed the laptop and pulled his daughter into his arms, holding her while she cried for the innocence she'd never get back. But even as he whispered comfort into her hair, his mind was already working, planning, calculating. We're going to make sure he never hurts anyone else, he said quietly. And we're going to make sure your mother understands exactly what she's done. That evening, Carlos arrived with a six-pack of beer and the weathered face of someone who'd seen too much combat. He took one look at Ethan's expression and set the beer aside. What's going on, brother? Ethan told him everything, watching his friend's face grow darker with each revelation. When he finished, Carlos was quiet for a long moment. You want me to kill him? No, I want something worse. What's worse than passing? Living with everyone knowing what you really are? Carlos nodded slowly. What do you need? Information. I need to know everything about Jaden Collins. Where he goes, who he talks to, what he cares about. And I need you to help me destroy it all. You're talking about ruining a man's life. He ruined my daughter's life. He ruined my marriage. He made my wife into someone I don't recognize, and my daughter into someone I have to protect from her own mother. Carlos studied Ethan's face in the dim garage light. This isn't you, brother. You're not vindictive. You're not cruel. I wasn't, but they made me into something else. What about Claire? What about Nina? Nina knows the truth now. She's devastated, but she's strong. She'll survive this. And Claire? Ethan's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Claire is going to learn that actions have consequences, that you can't betray the people who love you without paying a price. Ethan, think about this. Really think about it. Once you start down this path, there's no going back. There's already no going back. My marriage is over. My daughter's childhood is over. My family is destroyed. The only question now is whether I'm going to let them walk away thinking they won. Carlos was quiet for a long moment, then reached for his beer. What do you need me to do? Over the next 3 days, Ethan transformed from a betrayed husband into something else entirely. He still went to work, still kissed Claire goodbye in the mornings, still asked Nina about her day. But underneath the familiar routines, he was learning to be someone new, someone dangerous. Carlos had connections from their army days, people who knew how to gather information without leaving fingerprints. By Wednesday, Ethan had a complete dossier on Jaden Collins. His business records, his client list, his social media accounts, his apartment lease, his gym membership, his credit score, his dating history. The dating history was particularly interesting. Jaden had a pattern of targeting older women with money and younger women with daddy issues. He'd been arrested twice for maltreatment. Both charges dropped when the women suddenly refused to cooperate. He had outstanding debts to 3 different credit card companies and a history of bouncing checks. He's a professional manipulator, Carlos said, spreading the documents across Ethan's workbench. This isn't his first rodeo. How many others? At least 6 that I can confirm, maybe more. He targets women in their late 30s and early 40s, usually divorced or in bad marriages. Gets them to pay for his lifestyle while he sleeps with their daughters or friends. Ethan studied a photo of Jaden's previous sufferers, women who looked remarkably similar to Claire. Successful, attractive, hungry for attention from a younger man. He's done this before. The mother-daughter thing. 3 times that I can prove. The pattern is always the same. He meets the mother through his business, gains her trust, then slowly introduces himself to the daughter. Makes both of them think they're special, that he's never felt this way before. What happened to the others? 2 families destroyed. 1 self-destruction attempt. The 3rd case is still ongoing. The mother is in therapy. The daughter dropped out of college. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He's a hunter. He's a professional. And he's very good at what he does. Not good enough. Thursday morning, Ethan called in sick to work and drove to Elite Fitness Solutions. He parked across the street and waited, watching through the gym's floor-to-ceiling windows as Jaden worked with his clients. The man was skilled, charming, exactly the kind of person who could make both a lonely wife and an insecure daughter feel special. At 11:30, Claire's Audi pulled into the parking lot. Ethan watched his wife of 23 years walk into the gym wearing workout clothes that cost more than most people's rent. She moved with the confidence of someone who thought she was getting away with something. Her smile bright and carnivory as Jaden greeted her with a professional hug that lasted just a few seconds too long. They disappeared into a private training room, and Ethan didn't need to see what happened next. He'd read enough messages to know that Claire's fitness consultation involved very little actual fitness. His phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Dad, I think I might be pregnant." The world tilted sideways. Ethan gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white, his vision blurring at the edges. Nina was 19 years old, barely an adult, and now she might be carrying the child of a man who was simultaneously sleeping with her mother. "Come home. Now. I'm scared." "I know. Come home." Ethan drove through suburban streets that suddenly felt foreign, past houses where normal families lived normal lives, without the kind of devastating betrayal that had become his new reality. He passed the elementary school where Nina had learned to read, the park where she'd taken her first steps, the ice cream shop where they'd celebrated every birthday until she decided she was too old for such childish things. Now she was old enough to be pregnant by her mother's boyfriend. He found Nina in her bedroom, curled up on her bed with a pregnancy test in her hands. She looked up at him with eyes that were red from crying. And he saw his little girl again, the one who used to run to him when she had nightmares, who trusted him to fix everything that was broken in her world. "It's positive," she whispered. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed and pulled her into his arms. She felt small against his chest, fragile in a way that made his protective instincts roar to life. "We're going to figure this out," he said quietly. "You're going to be okay." "How can I be okay? I'm pregnant with a man who's been lying to me, who's been sleeping with my mother, who probably never cared about me at all." "You're going to be okay because you're strong, because you're my daughter, and because I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again." Nina looked up at him with something like hope in her eyes. "What are you going to do? Whatever it takes?" That afternoon, while Claire was still at her fitness consultation, Ethan called Carlos. "I need you to offer Jaden a job." "What kind of job?" "Construction. High-paying, cash under the table. Tell him you've got a private project, a wealthy client who needs discretion. Make it sound too good to pass up." "You want to get him alone?" "I want to get him isolated, away from witnesses, away from security cameras, away from anyone who might interfere." "Ethan, if you're planning what I think you're planning, I'm not going to kill him. I'm going to educate him." "About what?" "About the consequences of destroying other people's families." Carlos was quiet for a long moment. "This is going to get messy." "It's already messy. I'm just going to make it messy for him instead of for us." "What about Nina?" "Nina is going to have to decide what she wants to do about the pregnancy, but she's going to make that decision without any pressure from him." "And Claire?" "Claire is going to learn that some mistakes can't be fixed." Friday morning, Carlos made the call. He identified himself as a contractor looking for a personal trainer for a private client, someone who needed discretion and was willing to pay premium rates for it. The client was building a home gym in a remote location and wanted someone to help design and test the equipment. "Cash job," Carlos said, his voice professional and convincing. "5,000 for a weekend consultation. No questions asked." Jaden took the bait immediately. Of course he did. $5,000 was exactly the kind of money that could solve his credit problems and fund his lifestyle for another month. The meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at a construction site 20 miles outside of town. Ethan's construction site, technically, though the property wasn't listed in his name. It was registered to a shell company Carlos had set up years ago for legitimate business purposes, but it would serve a different purpose now. Saturday morning, Ethan told Claire he was going to work on a weekend project. She barely looked up from her phone, probably texting Jaden about their plans for the following week. "Will you be home for dinner?" she asked absently. "Probably not. This might take a while." "Okay." "Nina and I are going shopping anyway. Girls' day." Ethan wondered if Nina had told Claire about the pregnancy yet. Probably not. His daughter was still processing the reality of her situation, still trying to figure out how to navigate a world where her mother was competition for her boyfriend's attention. The construction site was perfect for what Ethan had in mind. Isolated, surrounded by trees, with heavy equipment that would muffle any sounds. He'd worked on legitimate projects here for years, but today it would serve as a classroom. Carlos arrived first, his truck loaded with tools and equipment that had nothing to do with construction. He was wearing the same expression he'd worn in Afghanistan when they'd interrogated insurgents. Calm, professional, focused. "You sure about this?" he asked as they unloaded the truck. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "What if he doesn't show?" "He'll show. He's greedy, and he thinks he's smarter than everyone else. That combination always leads to bad decisions." Jaden's BMW pulled up at exactly 2 o'clock, its black paint gleaming in the afternoon sun. He stepped out wearing expensive workout clothes and the kind of confident smile that had probably charmed dozens of women. "You must be Carlos," he said, extending his hand. "Thanks for thinking of me for this project." "No problem. My client is very specific about what he wants. He's had some bad experiences with trainers in the past." "I understand completely. Professionalism is everything in this business." Carlos led Jaden toward the construction site, making small talk about fitness and equipment. Ethan watched from inside the half-built structure, his heart pounding with anticipation and rage. "The client wants to set up the gym in this area," Carlos said, gesturing toward a concrete foundation surrounded by steel beams. "Privacy is the main concern. He's had issues with trainers who got too personal." "Personal how?" "Trainers who thought they could sleep with his wife, his daughter. That kind of personal." Jaden's smile faltered slightly. "I'm strictly professional." "I'm sure you are." That's when Ethan stepped out of the shadows. Jaden's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, fear, and then a kind of calculating awareness that made Ethan's blood boil. "Mr. Montgomery," Jaden said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "I'm sure you weren't. Look, if this is about Claire, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. I know exactly what you are." Jaden glanced around the construction site, probably looking for an escape route. But Carlos had positioned himself strategically, and there was nowhere to run. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know you're sleeping with my wife. I know you're sleeping with my daughter. I know you got my daughter pregnant." Jaden's face went pale. "That's not... I know you've done this before. Other families, other daughters. I know you're a hunter." "You can't prove any of that." Ethan pulled out his phone and showed Jaden the message threads, the photos, the evidence of months of manipulation and betrayal. "I can prove all of it." For the first time, Jaden looked genuinely afraid. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what you've done. I want you to understand the consequences of destroying other people's lives. Look, I'm sorry if..." "You're not sorry. You're just sorry you got caught." Ethan handed his phone to Carlos and began removing his jacket, his movements deliberate and calm. He'd been a soldier once before he became a husband and father. He'd learned to fight with tools and fists and whatever was available. Those skills had been dormant for 20 years, but they came back quickly. "I'm going to give you a choice," Ethan said, rolling up his sleeves. "You can walk away from my family right now, delete their numbers, never contact them again, disappear from their lives completely. Or you can stay and deal with the consequences." Jaden's eyes darted between Ethan and Carlos, probably calculating his chances of fighting his way out. He was younger, probably in better shape, but he was also scared and surrounded by men who had nothing left to lose. "I choose to walk away," he said quickly. "This is all a misunderstanding, but I'll respect your wishes." "It's too late for that." "What?" "You already made your choice when you decided to sleep with my daughter, when you decided to manipulate her into thinking she was special, when you decided to use her to get to my wife." Jaden took a step backward, his hands raised defensively. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt. My daughter is 19 years old and pregnant with your child. My wife thinks she's in love with you. My family is destroyed and you never meant for anyone to get hurt? I can fix this. I can make it right." "No, you can't." "But I can." The fight was over quickly. Jaden was strong and fit, but he was also a hunter who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. Ethan, on the other hand, was fueled by 20 years of protective rage and the kind of focused violence that came from defending everything he'd ever loved. When it was over, Jaden was unconscious on the concrete floor, his designer workout clothes torn and bloody. His shoulder hung at an unnatural angle, probably dislocated. His perfect face was swollen and bruised, no longer the handsome mask he used to manipulate women. "Is he dead?" Carlos asked, kneeling beside the motionless form. "No, but he's going to wish he was." Ethan pulled out his phone and began taking photos of Jaden's injuries, his torn clothes, his unconscious form surrounded by construction equipment. Then he sent a group text to every number in Jaden's contact list. "This is what happens to men who prey on families. Jaden Collins is a hunter who targets mothers and daughters. He's been exposed and he's been dealt with. Share this message." Along with the text, he sent screenshots of the message threads between Jaden and both Claire and Nina, edited to remove his daughter's personal information, but leaving enough to make Jaden's crimes clear. Carlos helped him load Jaden's unconscious form into the BMW, then drove it to the emergency room parking lot. They left him there with a note explaining that he'd been in an accident and needed medical attention. "What now?" Carlos asked as they drove back to town. "Now we let the internet do its work." By Sunday morning, Jaden's phone number, photos, and personal information were circulating through every fitness forum, social media platform, and local community group in the state. His gym received dozens of calls demanding his termination. His clients canceled their memberships. His landlord received anonymous tips about his financial problems. But Ethan wasn't finished. Sunday afternoon, he sat Nina down for another conversation. "I need you to tell me everything," he said. "Every detail about what happened between you and Jaden. Every conversation, every promise, every time he made you feel special. Dad, I need to know so I can protect other girls from him. So I can make sure he never does this again." Nina told him everything, her voice breaking as she described the manipulation tactics Jaden had used, the way he'd made her feel mature and sophisticated, the way he'd convinced her that what they were doing was special, that she was different from other girls her age. "He said Mom was just a client," she whispered. "He said he was only nice to her because he needed the money, but that I was the one he really wanted. And you believed him." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel special. Ethan recorded every word, his phone capturing his daughter's testimony in her own voice. Then he edited it carefully, removing any identifying information while preserving the emotional impact of her story. Monday morning, he created anonymous accounts on every social media platform he could find and began posting Nina's story alongside the photos and messages he'd already shared. He tagged fitness influencers, women's safety advocates, and parenting groups. The response was immediate and devastating. By Tuesday, Jaden's Instagram account was flooded with comments calling him a hunter. His business license was under investigation. His gym had terminated his contract and issued a public statement distancing themselves from his behavior. But the most satisfying response came from Claire. She burst into the house Tuesday evening, her face flushed with anger and confusion. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded. "People are calling me at work, asking if I know about Jaden. My clients are canceling appointments. Someone sent my boss screenshots of text messages." "What text messages?" Ethan asked calmly. "Don't play dumb with me. I know you did this." "Did what?" "Ruined his life, destroyed his reputation, posted private conversations online. I exposed a hunter. He's not a hunter. He's a good man who made some mistakes. He's a hunter who's been sleeping with our 19-year-old daughter." Claire's face went white. "That's not true. Ask her. Nina would never. Nina is pregnant with his child." The words hit Claire like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her hand pressed to her mouth. "That's impossible." "Ask her." Claire's legs gave out and she sank into a kitchen chair. Her perfect composure cracked, revealing the frightened woman underneath. "This is all your fault," she said quietly. "You drove him away. You made him desperate." "I drove him away? You're cold, Ethan. You're distant. You work all the time. You never talk to me. You never make me feel desired." Is it any wonder I looked elsewhere? "So you decided to share your boyfriend with our daughter?" "I didn't know about Nina. I thought he was just being nice to her." "You knew. Maybe not consciously, but you knew." Claire's phone buzzed with another message, probably another client canceling their contract. Her interior design business was built on reputation and referrals, and both were being destroyed by her association with Jaden. "I've lost everything," she whispered. "My business, my reputation, my friends, everything I worked for. You lost it the moment you decided to betray your family. I never meant for this to happen, but it did happen, and now you have to live with the consequences." That night, Claire packed a bag and left for her sister's house. She said she needed time to think, to figure out what came next. But Ethan knew she was really running away from the mess she'd created. Nina, meanwhile, had made her decision about the pregnancy. She'd found a clinic that provided counseling and support, and she'd decided to terminate the pregnancy. It was her choice, and Ethan supported her completely. "I can't bring a child into this mess," she said. "I can't have a baby with a man who hurt so many people. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone." "I feel so stupid, Dad." "How could I not see what he was doing?" "Because you're 19 years old and you trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's not your fault." "It feels like my fault." "It's not. You were manipulated by someone who's done this before. You're a sufferer, not a perpetrator." Nina cried in his arms, grieving for the innocence she'd lost and the future she'd have to rebuild. But she was strong, stronger than either of them had realized, and Ethan knew she'd survive this. By the end of the week, Jaden Collins had disappeared. His apartment was empty, his business was closed, and his social media accounts had been deleted. Someone said they'd seen him at a bus station, buying a ticket to another state. Claire returned home Friday night, her face gaunt and her clothes wrinkled. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 5 days. "I need to know if you're going to forgive me," she said. Ethan was sitting in his workshop, surrounded by tools and projects that suddenly seemed meaningless. He looked up at his wife of 23 years and tried to find some trace of the woman he'd fallen in love with. "There's nothing to forgive," he said finally. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you made a choice. You chose to betray your family. You chose to put your desires above your daughter's safety. You chose to destroy everything we built together. I made a mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions over the course of months. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "So what happens now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices." "I don't understand." Ethan stood up and walked to his workbench, where he'd laid out a series of legal documents. Divorce papers, custody agreements, financial settlements. He'd been planning this conversation for days. "The house is going to Nina," he said. "She'll need a place to live when she starts college, and she deserves to benefit from the home we built together. You can't just give away our house." "I can and I did. It's in her name now, legally transferred yesterday. You'll need to find somewhere else to live." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore." Claire stared at the documents, her face crumpling as she realized the extent of what she'd lost. "My business is ruined," she whispered. "I have no income, no savings, no clients, and now no home. You should have thought of that before you decided to destroy our family." "Ethan, please, we can work through this. We can go to counseling, we can rebuild." "There's nothing left to rebuild. You made sure of that." Claire sank to her knees beside his workbench, her designer clothes incongruous against the concrete floor. "I'll do anything. I'll cut all contact with him, I'll quit my job, He's already gone. His life is destroyed, his reputation is ruined, and he'll never work in this industry again. That part is finished. Then we can start over." "No, we can't." Ethan pulled out his phone and showed Claire the screenshots he'd taken of her messages with Jaden, the ones where she'd called Nina competition, the ones where she'd laughed about her husband's pathetic jealousy, the ones where she'd detailed exactly what she wanted to do with Jaden while her daughter slept in the next room. "You're not the woman I married," he said quietly. "You're not even the woman I thought I knew. You're someone who could watch her daughter fall for the same man she was sleeping with and feel jealous instead of protective." Claire read the messages, her face growing paler with each exchange. "I didn't mean those things. I was angry, I was confused. You meant every word, and now you have to live with them." Nina appeared in the doorway of the workshop, her face drawn but determined. She'd been listening to the conversation, and now she stepped forward to face her mother. "I heard what you wrote about me," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "You called me a naive little girl. You said I was making a fool of myself. Nina, honey, you were jealous of me, your own daughter. You were jealous because you thought he liked me better." Claire reached for Nina, but her daughter stepped back. "I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. I read it all. How you laughed about Dad working late while you were with Jaden. How you planned to deal with the Nina situation when we got back from the trip. How you thought I was too stupid to realize what was happening. I never said you were stupid. You said I was pathetically grateful for any male attention. You said I was exactly the kind of girl who falls for older men because she has daddy issues." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He'd seen those messages, but hearing them repeated in his daughter's voice made them infinitely worse. "You knew," Nina continued, her voice growing stronger. "You knew he was manipulating me, and you let it happen because you thought it would make him more available to you. That's not true. It is true. And the worst part is that I was starting to trust you again. After Dad told me what was happening, I thought maybe we could work through this as a family. But you don't care about family. You only care about yourself." Claire was sobbing now, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. "I love you, Nina. I love both of you. I made terrible mistakes, but I love you." "Love doesn't destroy people," Nina said quietly. "Love protects them. Love puts their needs above your own desires. What you did wasn't love. It was selfishness. Nina turned to Ethan. Dad, I'm going to stay with Sarah for a few weeks while I figure things out. Is that okay? Of course. Take as much time as you need. Will you be all right? Ethan looked at his daughter, his strong, resilient daughter, who'd survived betrayal and manipulation and was choosing to heal rather than seek revenge. I'll be fine. You worry about yourself. Nina kissed his cheek, then walked past Claire without another word. They heard her upstairs packing her things, preparing to leave the only home she'd ever known. She'll forgive me eventually, Claire said, her voice desperate. She's young. She'll understand that people make mistakes. She'll never forgive you, and she shouldn't. You're poisoning her against me. I don't need to poison her against you. You did that yourself. Claire stood up slowly, her legs shaking. What about us, Ethan? What about 23 years of marriage? What about them? They have to count for something. They do count for something. They count as 23 years of my life that I'll never get back. 23 years of trusting someone who was capable of this level of betrayal. I'm still the same person you married. No, you're not. The person I married would never have done this. The person I married would have protected our daughter, not competed with her. Ethan gathered the legal documents and handed them to Claire. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. After that, you'll be trespassing. Where am I supposed to go? My business is ruined. My reputation is destroyed. Figure it out. You're a smart woman. You managed to orchestrate months of deception without getting caught. Surely you can figure out how to find an apartment? Claire clutched the documents to her chest. This is cruel, Ethan. This isn't like you. You're right. The old me would have tried to fix this. The old me would have blamed himself, gone to counseling, worked to repair what you broke. But you didn't just betray me. You betrayed our daughter. You put her in danger for your own gratification. That's unforgivable. I never put her in danger. You let a hunter into our home. You gave him access to our daughter. You watched him manipulate her and did nothing to stop it because you were getting what you wanted from him. He's not a hunter. He's 30 years old, and he got our 19-year-old daughter pregnant while sleeping with her mother. What would you call that? Claire was quiet for a long moment, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. I didn't know about the pregnancy, but you knew about everything else. You knew he was paying attention to Nina, and you let it continue because you were jealous. You wanted to prove you were more desirable than your own daughter. It's exactly what happened. And now you're going to live with the consequences. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan watched his old life disintegrate with surgical precision. Claire's interior design business collapsed as clients canceled contracts and referrals dried up. Her reputation in their social circle was destroyed when word of the scandal spread through their community. Her friends stopped calling, her professional associations distanced themselves, and her carefully curated image crumbled into nothing. Meanwhile, Nina began the slow process of healing. She found a therapist who specialized in helping young women recover from manipulative relationships. She enrolled in community college courses to keep her mind occupied. She spent time with friends who reminded her that she was valued for more than just her youth and vulnerability. I feel stupid for falling for it, she told Ethan during one of their weekly dinners. All the warning signs were there. You're not stupid. You're young, and you trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's not a character flaw. How did you know? How did you see through him when I couldn't? Because I'm older and I've seen more of the world. Because I know what real love looks like, and what he was offering wasn't it. What does real love look like? Ethan thought about the question seriously. Real love protects you. It makes you feel safe and valued for who you are, not for what you can provide. Real love doesn't ask you to keep secrets or compete with other people for attention. Mom said she loved him. Your mother loved the way he made her feel. That's different from loving a person. Nina was quiet for a moment, picking at her food. Do you think she really didn't know about us? About me and him? I think she chose not to know. There's a difference. I hate that I still miss him sometimes. Even knowing what he was, even knowing he was using me, sometimes I miss feeling special. That's normal. What he gave you felt real, even if it wasn't. It's okay to grieve for what you thought you had. How do I make sure this never happens again? You learn to trust your instincts. You learn that real affection doesn't come with conditions or secrecy. And you remember that anyone who tries to isolate you from your family or make you keep secrets probably doesn't have your best interests at heart. Nina nodded, absorbing his words. I'm glad you found out, Dad. I'm glad you stopped it before it got worse. It was already worse than it should have been. But it could have been even worse. He could have convinced me to drop out of school or move in with him or cut ties with you completely. He was working toward that, I think. Ethan had suspected as much. Hunters like Jaden always work to isolate their sufferers, to make them dependent and vulnerable. If he hadn't discovered the messages when he did, Nina might have lost much more than her innocence. 3 weeks after Claire moved out, Ethan received a phone call from her sister Simone. She's staying with me, Simone said without preamble, and she's a mess. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Because you seem pretty calm for someone whose marriage just imploded. My marriage imploded the moment Claire decided to betray our family. I'm just dealing with the aftermath. She made a mistake, Ethan, a terrible mistake, but people recover from these things. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern of calculated decisions over several months. And it wasn't just about me. It was about our daughter. She didn't know about Nina. She chose not to know. There's a difference. Simone was quiet for a moment. What if I told you she's been talking about self-destruction? Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Is she serious? I don't know. She talks about how she's lost everything, how there's no point in going on. I'm worried about her. Has she seen a professional? She won't go. She says therapists will just judge her like everyone else has. What do you want me to do, Simone? I want you to talk to her, to give her some hope that this isn't the end of the world. It is the end of her world. The world where she could betray people without consequences. That world is over. Jesus, Ethan, when did you become so cold? I became cold when I discovered that my wife was competing with my daughter for the same man's attention. I became cold when I realized that the woman I'd trusted with my life was capable of putting our child in danger. She's still human. She's still suffering. So is Nina. So am I. So are all the other women Jaden manipulated before he met Claire. But somehow, we're all expected to manage our suffering without destroying other people's lives. Simone sighed. What happens now? You just write off 23 years of marriage? 23 years of marriage to someone I thought I knew. It turns out I was married to a stranger. People change, Ethan. People make mistakes and learn from them. Some mistakes are too big to learn from. Some changes reveal who someone really was all along. That night, Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling of the house that now belonged to his daughter. The silence was different now. Not the comfortable quiet of a shared life, but the empty stillness of a life rebuilt from scratch. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Claire. Simone let me use her phone. I need to see you. He stared at the message for a long time before responding. No. Please, I need closure. You have closure, it's called consequences. I'm staying at the shelter on 5th Street. If you change your mind. Ethan turned off his phone and tried to sleep, but Claire's message haunted him. The woman he'd once loved was living in a homeless shelter, her life destroyed by choices she'd made in pursuit of feeling young and desired again. He should feel guilty. The old Ethan would have felt guilty. But the old Ethan had believed in redemption and second chances. The new Ethan understood that some actions were unforgivable, some betrayals too deep to heal. The next morning, Carlos stopped by with coffee and the grim satisfaction of a job completed. Heard she's at the shelter, he said, settling into a chair in Ethan's kitchen. Simone told me. You going to see her? No. Might be the last chance. Word is she's not doing well. Ethan looked at his old friend, searching for judgment in his eyes. Do you think I'm being too harsh? I think you're being exactly as harsh as the situation requires. She was my wife for 23 years. And she threw it all away for a 30-year-old hunter who was simultaneously grooming your daughter. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. What if she hurts herself? That's her choice, just like betraying her family was her choice. Carlos was right, but the words still sat heavily in Ethan's chest. He'd never wanted to be the kind of man who could watch his wife's life crumble without feeling compassion. But he'd also never imagined he'd be the kind of man whose wife could endanger their child for personal gratification. 2 days later, Nina called him with news that made his blood run cold. Dad, Mom's in the hospital. What happened? Self-destruction attempt, pills. Simone found her and called the ambulance. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability settle on his shoulders. Is she going to be okay? Physically, yes, but Dad, she's asking for you. I can't see her, Nina. I know. I'm not asking you to. I just thought you should know. Are you going to see her? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should, but part of me thinks it would just make things worse. Follow your instincts. Don't let anyone guilt you into doing something that doesn't feel right. What if she tries again? Then that's her choice. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Nina was quiet for a moment. This feels like too much responsibility for a 19-year-old. You're not responsible for your mother's choices. You're only responsible for your own. I know that intellectually, but emotionally? Emotionally, you're a good person who wants to help someone who's hurting. That's not a flaw. But sometimes, helping someone means letting them face the consequences of their actions. That night, Ethan drove to the hospital, not to see Claire, but to check on Nina, who'd decided to visit her mother after all. He found his daughter in the waiting room, her face pale and her hands shaking. How did it go? He asked, sitting beside her. Terrible. She begged me to forgive her, to help her rebuild her life. She said she'd learned her lesson, that she'd never make the same mistakes again. And what did you tell her? I told her that forgiveness isn't something you can demand. It's something you earn over time through changed behavior. And I told her that even if I forgave her, it wouldn't change the fact that she can't undo what she did. Ethan felt a surge of pride for his daughter's wisdom. How did she respond? She got angry, said I was being manipulated by you, that you'd turn me against her, said I was too young to understand adult relationships. The same thing she's been saying all along. Yeah. And that's when I realized that she hasn't learned anything. She's not sorry for what she did. She's sorry she got caught. She's not remorseful about betraying us. She's angry that we won't pretend it didn't happen. Nina leaned against his shoulder, seeking comfort from the one parent who'd never let her down. I don't think I'll see her again, she said quietly. Not for a long time, anyway. That's your choice to make. Do you think that makes me a bad daughter? I think it makes you a smart young woman who understands that some relationships are too toxic to maintain. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the driveway of the house that now belonged to his daughter, watching her load boxes into her car. She was moving to a college town 3 hours away, starting fresh with a clean slate and a better understanding of her own worth. You sure you'll be okay? She asked, giving him a hug that lasted longer than usual. I'll be fine. You worry about yourself. What will you do with all this space? Ethan looked at the house he'd built with his own hands, the home where he'd raised his daughter and thought he'd known his wife. I'm thinking about selling it, starting over somewhere new. That might be good for you. What about you? Any regrets about leaving? Nina glanced at the house, then shook her head. No regrets. This place has too many bad memories now. I need to build new ones. You're going to do great things, Nina. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too, Dad, for protecting me, even when it was hard. After she drove away, Ethan walked through the empty house one last time. In the kitchen, he could still see Claire reading her phone, probably texting Jaden while pretending to care about family dinner. In the living room, he could see Nina curled up on the couch, trusting and innocent, while a hunter planned her seduction. But he could also see better memories. Nina's first steps, Christmas mornings, family game nights when they'd all laughed together. Those memories belonged to a different family, one that had existed before betrayal and manipulation destroyed everything good about their life together. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Claire. I'm out of the hospital. I'm getting help. I want to try again. Ethan stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt once they'd been burned. Some trust couldn't be restored once it had been shattered. 3 years later, Ethan was loading equipment into his truck when a familiar black BMW pulled up at the construction site. His blood turned to ice as Jaden Collins stepped out, looking older and thinner than Ethan remembered. Hello, Montgomery, Jaden said, his voice lacking the confidence it had once carried. You have 30 seconds to get back in your car and leave. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to talk. 25 seconds. I know what you did to me. The messages, the photos, the social media campaign. You destroyed my life. Good. I lost everything. My business, my reputation, my friends. I had to leave the state. Not my problem. I spent 2 years in therapy, learning about my patterns, my behavior, understanding the damage I caused. Ethan looked at the man who'd nearly destroyed his family, searching for signs of genuine change. What he saw was someone who'd learned to say the right words, but still felt entitled to forgiveness. And what do you want from me? Ethan asked. I want to make amends. To you, to Nina, to everyone I hurt. You can't make amends for what you did. I can try. I'm different now. I understand that my behavior was carnivory, that I used people. You sexually violated my daughter. The words hung in the air like a capital punishment. Jaden's face went white. I never forced. She was 19 years old. You were 30. You used your position of authority and her trust to manipulate her into a sexual relationship while simultaneously sleeping with her mother. In some states, that's statutory sexually violate. In all states, it's carnivory behavior. I thought she was mature for her age. Every hunter thinks that. Every hunter tells himself that his sufferer wanted it, that she was special, that the relationship was consensual. But 19-year-olds can't consent to relationships with men who have that much power over them. Jaden took a step backward. I never meant to hurt anyone. You did hurt someone. You hurt my daughter. You got her pregnant and then disappeared when your crimes were exposed. You left her to deal with the consequences of your manipulation while you ran away to protect yourself. I didn't know about the pregnancy. You didn't want to know. Just like you didn't want to know that you were destroying a family. You only cared about getting what you wanted. I'm trying to make it right. You can't make it right. What you did to my family, to my daughter, to all the other women you manipulated, that can't be undone. Ethan pulled out his phone and began recording. But you can do one thing. You can get back in your car, drive away, and never contact anyone from my family again. If you ever come near Nina, if you ever try to reach out to her, if you ever even think about her, I will finish what I started 3 years ago. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm promising you. You had your chance to be a decent human being, and you chose to be a hunter instead. Now you live with the consequences. Jaden stared at him for a long moment, probably weighing his options. Finally, he got back in his car and drove away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the afternoon sun. That evening, Ethan called Nina to tell her about the encounter. How did he look? She asked. Older, thinner, like someone who's learned to say the right words but hasn't really changed. Did he ask about me? He said he wanted to make amends. I told him that wasn't possible. Good. I don't want to see him, don't want to hear from him. I've worked too hard to heal from what he did. How are you doing? Really? Better, much better. I'm dating someone new, someone my own age who treats me like an equal instead of a prize. I'm graduating next year with honors. I'm happy, Dad. I'm glad. What about you? Are you happy? Ethan looked around his small apartment, sparse and functional but comfortable. He had his work, his friendship with Carlos, occasional dates with women who understood that some scars took time to heal. I'm content, he said. That's enough for now. Have you heard from Mom? No. And I don't want to. She's been trying to contact me, sending letters to my dorm, calling my friends. She says she's changed, that she's learned from her mistakes. What do you think? I think she's learned to say what she thinks I want to hear, but I don't think she's really changed. If she had, she'd respect my decision to cut contact instead of trying to force her way back into my life. You're very wise for someone so young. I had a good teacher. 1 year later, Ethan was finishing a bathroom renovation when his phone rang. It was Simone, Claire's sister, and her voice was shaky with grief. Ethan, I need to tell you something. Claire is dead. The words hit him like a physical blow. What happened? Car accident. She was drinking, driving too fast. Hit a tree on Highway 42. Ethan sank into a chair, the news settling over him like a heavy blanket. When? 3 days ago. The funeral is tomorrow? Does Nina know? I called her first. She's not coming to the funeral. I'm not coming either. I figured, but I thought you should know. After Simone hung up, Ethan sat in the silence of the half-finished bathroom, surrounded by tools and tile and the physical evidence of work that would outlast the people who commissioned it. Claire was dead. The woman he'd loved for 23 years, the mother of his daughter, the person who'd betrayed everything they'd built together. She was gone. He should feel something. Grief, regret, closure. Instead, he felt empty, like the end of a book he'd stopped caring about halfway through. That night, he called Nina. I heard, she said without preamble. Are you okay? I don't know what I am. It's okay not to know. She was a big part of your life for a long time. I keep thinking about the woman I married, the one who existed before Jaden, before the betrayal. I loved that woman. That woman was real, Dad. What happened later doesn't erase the good years, doesn't it? No. The love you felt was real, even if it was based on an incomplete understanding of who she was. You can grieve for the woman you thought you knew without forgiving the woman she became. When did you get so wise? Therapy. Lots and lots of therapy. 6 months after Claire's passing, Ethan received a package with no return address. Inside was a letter in handwriting he didn't recognize, along with a newspaper clipping from a small town in Nevada. Mr. Montgomery, you don't know me, but I know what Jaden Collins did to your family. He did the same thing to mine. The newspaper article explains what happened to him. I thought you should know. The world is safer without him. A grateful mother. The newspaper article described a hit-and-run accident that had killed Jaden Collins while he was jogging in a rural area outside Las Vegas. The driver was never found, and police suspected it was intentional. Ethan read the article twice, then burned it along with the letter. He felt no satisfaction in Jaden's passing, no sense of justice served. The man was gone, but the damage he'd caused would last forever. 2 years later, Ethan stood in a small church watching his daughter marry a good man her own age. Nina was radiant in her wedding dress, her smile genuine and unguarded in a way it hadn't been since before Jaden entered their lives. During the father-daughter dance, she whispered in his ear, "Thank you for protecting me, even when it cost you everything." "You didn't cost me anything," he whispered back. "You saved me." From what? From becoming someone I couldn't live with. After the reception, Ethan drove home through streets that had become familiar over the past few years. He'd built a new life in a new town, with new friends and new routines. The past was still there, a scar that would never fully heal, but it no longer defined him. His phone buzzed with a text from Nina, already on her honeymoon. "I love you, Dad. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like." Ethan smiled as he pulled into his driveway. The house was small, practical, nothing like the grand home he'd built for his first family. But it was his, earned through honest work and careful choices. Inside, he poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat in his favorite chair, surrounded by the quiet satisfaction of a life rebuilt from nothing. Tomorrow, he would work on a new project, help another family build something beautiful and lasting. Tonight, he would remember the cost of betrayal and the price of protecting the people you love. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt once they were burned. Some trust couldn't be restored once it was shattered. But some men could learn to build new bridges, stronger ones that could weather the storms that destroyed their predecessors. Ethan raised his glass in a silent toast to his daughter, to the future she was building with someone who deserved her trust, and to the hard-won wisdom that came from surviving the unthinkable. He'd lost a wife and gained an understanding of what love really meant. He'd lost a family and gained the knowledge that some things were worth protecting at any cost. It was a fair trade.